Definitely when I was a teenager, I never really had the best grades.
If you were to describe Oxford with three randomly selected words, what words would you pick, do you think?
Ooh, very decentralized, I
Interesting.
think is one. Um, Ancient, I feel like it's very cliche but true. And also quite inclusive, maybe my third word.
Okay, great. Why Oxford for you?
I feel like it's one of those pipe dreams that a lot of us have as teenagers. It's something I didn't really get to fully realise. I got rejected from Cambridge when I applied for my undergrad, but I always wanted to try and have the Oxford experience and come and study at one of these universities. So I applied to Oxford for my masters, and I luckily got in. So
Would you say there's such a thing as a typical Oxford student?
I think you can have students who are kind of do similar things. I don't know if I'd use the word typical because there's all kinds of wonderful ranges of people and all sorts of different people at Oxford, but I think that we can kind of go through similar experiences at similar times. So I'd say your typical Oxford student will probably get more tired towards the middle of term, for example, but I don't think I could say there's a certain archetype of student, if that kind of makes sense.
Before you came to Oxford, did you have any concerns or anxieties about what it might be like?
Not in terms of the lifestyle. I think obviously starting a new course at a new university is always going to be quite daunting, but in terms of integrating and meeting the people, not really.
Okay. Did you have any sense that Oxford was a place that was for a certain type of person, perhaps someone who was very privileged or posh, for example?
I mean, the preconceptions always there through what we've heard in the media, right? But personally, I went to a comprehensive school. I just did a bachelor's degree at another Russell Group university. I wasn't in the system, but I always figured that because Oxford's just a British university, we'd have the same range of people that I'd seen at my old university, and it would just be wonderful and diverse. Good.
Would you say that Oxford in general has been quite supportive for you in whatever way you want to take that word?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been weird because my research doesn't necessarily align with what's going on in Oxford. But despite that, everyone's always been very supportive of me. The wellbeing team's been great, and I've had a really good time. I felt supported where I can be, and I've tried to work out the bits. Maybe I have to work on my own a little bit.
If you were to go back in time 10 or so years, do you think you could imagine yourself coming to Oxford at that age?
No, I mean, not even in 2019, and I was like, oh, I'll go do my bachelor's at another university. I didn't think I'd be coming back into this Oxbridge system. I didn't think I'd be coming into it in the first place. And it's something I'm very proud of.
So what was the start of the story for you and coming to Oxford? What sort of kicked it off, do you think?
Definitely when I was a teenager, I never really had the best grades growing up, which is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but I only had, B's and C's in my GCSEs. I didn't have any A's, and I kind of got similar on my A-levels. I think I got AAC. So I kind of figured that was a kind of closed door for me. But when I was very fortunate that I got a undergraduate research scholarship when I was doing my bachelor's degree, and I learned all about the research process, and I kind of fell in love with that, and I was like, I don't have the best grades, but I have this research experience, let's give it another shot. And very, very fortunately, I managed to be accepted to my master's here.
You say it was fortunate, but obviously you must have put in a fair amount of work into it.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you think helped the competitiveness of your application?
It definitely wasn't my grades. I scraped by with a mid-high 2-1, which isn't necessarily what people think of when they think of an Oxford student. Normally they think of very top grades. I think what got me in is that I could show what I was passionate about. I could link it to what I wanted to do in the faculty. And I had that research experience. I had other relevant experience besides my grades to show that I was capable, because frankly my academic record isn't necessarily what you'd expect of an Oxford student. It isn't fantastic, so I kind of tried to give myself the edge in different areas.
So what advice would you give to other people who might be interested in Oxford but may not think that they're good enough?
I mean, there's no reason not to try. Like, I had the same thing when I applied to Cambridge for my undergrad. I had no A grades in any of my GCSEs. I still made it to interview, you know, and like even now I got here despite, you know, not having the best grades in the book, finishing my GCSEs with B's and C's, right? So I think I say this to myself, I say it to other people, and I've helped people with university applications. There's like literally no reason not to try applying at the very least. The worst that they can say is no. Obviously, don't do it to the point where it costs you your mental health, because that's never healthy. But if it's something that you want to aspire to, just go for it.
What would you say, if anything, is your least favourite thing about Oxford?
I think sometimes, I use the word decentralise as one of my first 3 words. I think sometimes you can kind of get very overwhelmed. There's a lot going on all of the time. And it can be quite overwhelming at first to try and, you know, there's quite a lot of colleges try and catch up with everything that's going on. But if you find a good group of people and you find the stuff that works for you, normally that can narrow in pretty quickly. And you can continue to do what you want to do. And I don't think it would really be as much of a negative as you think it is.
Earlier you said that you assumed Oxford would just be like another British university. Is there anything really that special about Oxford?
Oh, I mean, there definitely is. When I say it's like any other British university, I mean, you know, I don't think the people were going to be dramatically different. The people here are absolutely wonderful. I think in terms of like, when I go and talk to people I did my bachelor's with, and I say some of the Oxford jargon, they think I'm from another world at this point. And in that respect, it's very, very different. Sometimes I find it a little bit hard to relate to people who went to other universities. But I think it's the students that are more aligned with a British university. I really like the people here, but definitely it's a much different system compared to even within other areas of the Russell Group.
Does Oxford have good support for people with neurodiversity, would you say?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2021 in the final year of my bachelor's degree. So I never had my diagnostic experience in Oxford, but I know other people who have, and it's been a good experience. They've potentially been able to get help with money for their diagnosis, and like it's been a decent experience to them. I was very fortunate in that my student support plan I could just take from my last university and bring it over. But to be honest, I found some fantastic neurodivergent support groups for the neurodiverse population. ADHD is one that I use. I go to their events quite a lot. And there'll always be, you'll definitely find your people here. So if it's like a thing where you're worried about, oh, but I'm neurodiverse, am I going to fit in? Like I get along with a lot of people here. I'm neurodiverse myself. I can guarantee you it's not something that I've ever been concerned about in Oxford.
Great. If you were to go back in time again and speak to your earlier self, what sort of advice might you give about applying to a university like Oxford?
Just keep going and be ridiculously stubborn. If you don't keep trying, you know, you won't necessarily get to where you want to be, but by the same token, make sure you rest. I've experienced burnout. I know what that's like, and that sucks too. So I think I'd tell them, you know, keep going, keep trying, but make sure you take that time for yourself as well, and make sure you find that balance.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just go for it. If you're thinking about coming, you know, maybe you don't have perfect grades, maybe you're neurodivergent, maybe you don't know you're neurodivergent, like I didn't know when I started applying to university. You know, take time, learn yourself, keep going, be stubborn, but rest, and you've got this.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much.
Cheers.